Hello, friend, and welcome to the Sleepy Meteorologist. Tonight, we're gently unraveling the quiet power behind hurricanes, the soft, spiraling story of how these great tempests gather their strength, not with violence, but with patience. One breath of warm ocean air at a time. Maybe your day has stretched far and wide. Maybe your mind is still sifting through the little moments, looking for a calm place to settle. Right now, you've arrived. You're here, and that's enough. What time is it where you are? Is the sky quiet? Can you hear the stillness between the winds? In this space, there's no pressure to think, or solve, or rush. Just the slow unfolding of weather's gentle rhythms, told in soft tones, and shared with care. If you enjoy these calming journeys into the skies above, feel free to like or subscribe, only if your heart feels called to. It helps other sleepy travelers find their way through the dark. For now, let yourself sink into comfort. There's nothing you need to do but rest. Let's begin. Beneath the watchful gaze of the tropical sun, the ocean begins to warm, slowly, steadily, with the patience of the earth itself. Its surface shimmers like silk, touched by golden light, and beneath that gentle glow, something almost imperceptible begins. A breath. The sea inhales heat all day, quietly storing it, letting it pool just beneath the surface. And when the air above becomes just right, still, warm and heavy, the ocean begins to exhale. Not in gusts, not in great heaves, but in soft tendrils. Water, warmed by the sun, rises into the sky, not in a rush, but in invisible curls of vapor, winding upward like a whispered secret. Molecule by molecule, the sea releases part of itself, letting it drift into the waiting arms of the atmosphere. There is no thunder, no sudden roar, just this soft, unseen transfer. The warmth becomes vapor. The vapor becomes clouds. Far above, tiny droplets begin to form, too small to see, yet full of purpose. They gather slowly, cradled by the air, their energy rising higher with every breath the ocean takes. And so it begins. This is the birthplace of a storm, but not a storm as we often imagine. There's no chaos here, no sound of wind or lash of rain. Only warmth, only water, only the first exhalations of something ancient and deeply alive. Out over these warm tropical seas, hurricanes are born not suddenly, but gently. They begin with warmth, they begin with breath, and they begin with time. As the water rises, it carries more than vapor. It carries energy, stored, steady, and waiting. This energy fuels the sky above, slowly building invisible architecture. There is no rush in nature's design. Every particle, every ripple, every gentle swirl is part of a quiet plan. It's a process that might go unnoticed if we weren't paying close attention. The surface of the sea looks calm. The air is quiet. But above and within, a dance has started. A slow, spiraling rhythm that will grow, evolve, and someday swirl into something greater, but not yet. Right now, it's still just a breath. The ocean sighs, and the sky listens. This is the beginning. Soft, subtle, beautiful. The warm ocean begins to breathe, and the story unfolds. As the warm, moist air continues its slow rise, something delicate is left behind. Not a hole, not an emptiness, but a gentle absence, a subtle lowering of pressure. The air that once occupied this space has lifted upward, drawn into the sky, and now the atmosphere feels it. It responds like a soft inhale. Air from the surroundings begins to drift inward, slow and steady, to fill the space that was left behind. This is low pressure, but not the kind we hear in hurried forecasts or dramatic warnings. This is its quiet beginning, a whisper, a hush, a pull so faint it might go unnoticed unless we knew where to look. The winds don't howl here, they murmur, they begin to gather, not in chaos, but in harmony, circling gently, spiraling ever so slightly inward. This motion, this slow rotation, becomes the heartbeat of a storm. It pulses with intention, even though we can't yet see it with our eyes. It moves in silence, drawing in air from every side like a soft, rhythmic breath. The center, this low-pressure cradle, is where it all begins to take shape. Air flows toward it, warmed and moist, then rises once more, cooling as it climbs, forming clouds with every step upward. And again, more air rushes in to take its place. Then again, and again, a cycle begins. This is not a machine. It's not mechanical or rigid. It's more like a song, played slowly and on repeat. A chorus of pressure and motion, warmth and water, lifting and circling. Though it starts so small, barely a breeze, barely a drift, this whisper of low pressure is steady. And what is steady becomes strong. Here in the calm early stages of a storm's life, we see how even the gentlest forces in nature can shape something immense. No urgency, no violence, just balance. The air responds, not because it must, but because it always has. Low pressure pulls, the atmosphere listens, and so the pattern begins, expanding outward in quiet spirals. This is the breath after the ocean's exhale, the world inhaling in response. The whisper becomes a hum, the hum becomes a rhythm, and slowly, softly, a storm begins to form, not with a roar, but with a sigh. And still, all remains calm. High above the warming sea, the air rises, slowly, peacefully, carrying with it the ocean's gentle breath. As this motion builds, something unseen begins to influence its path. Not a push, not a shove, but a quiet nudge. Something subtle, something steady. It's the earth itself, rotating ever so patiently beneath our feet. And with that rotation comes a hidden guide, the Coriolis effect. It doesn't rush, it doesn't force. Instead, it gently coaxes the rising air to curve, to bend, to spiral ever so slightly. It's not something we can feel with our hands or see with our eyes, but it's always there, whispering to the wind, "Turn, slowly now, just like this." In the northern hemisphere, that whisper curves the winds to the right. In the southern hemisphere, to the left. But no matter where it begins, the result is the same. A slow, dreamy swirl. A sleepy turning. A storm that begins to spin. Not wildly, not violently, but softly, like a dancer in a slow-motion ballet. Arms stretched wide, twirling to a rhythm no one else can hear. This is the beginning of a cyclone's form, guided by the planet's spin. It's not dramatic. It's not loud. It's the Earth's lullaby, played through motion. And though the Coriolis effect is invisible, its influence is profound. Without it, the storm would rise, but never dance. It would build, but never turn. This gentle rotation doesn't create the storm, it shapes it. It gives it form. It introduces balance. A quiet symmetry that wraps around the low-pressure center, like the arms of a sleepy tide. With every breath of rising air and every soft pull of rotation, the storm's spiral grows more defined, still slow, still peaceful, but no longer still. It begins to curl like a seashell. It turns like the winding of a conch, like the slow spiral of a galaxy. And all of this happens in silence. The Coriolis effect doesn't shout, it barely speaks. But it is always present, this soft turn, this patient twist, this subtle spin. So now, above the sea, with warm air rising and low pressure drawing the world inward, the storm begins to turn. Not with urgency, but with grace. And in that spin, something beautiful is beginning to take shape. As the moist air rises higher and higher, carried upward by warmth and motion, it begins to meet cooler layers of the atmosphere. And when warm air meets cool air, something magical happens. The invisible becomes visible. The sky begins to bloom. The water vapor, once hidden and weightless, condenses into delicate droplets. At first, they gather into faint wisps, soft brushstrokes against the blue. But they don't stop there. These wisps build, they reach, they rise. Soon, the sky is filled with towering shapes, pillars of cloud growing upward like mountain ranges made of mist. This is where the storm begins to wear its colours. Not of darkness or dread, but of softness, of pale grey and ivory white, of tender light and quiet strength. Every droplet that forms in these clouds releases just a little heat, a whisper of warmth returned to the sky. This released energy feeds the system, softly encouraging more air to rise, more vapour to condense, more clouds to grow. It's not a rush, it's not a roar, it's a lullaby echoing upward, hidden in the warmth. Each note is a droplet, each chord is a cloud. The atmosphere responds with grace, allowing the clouds to bloom like sleepy flowers stretching toward the stars. These aren't ordinary clouds. They are cumulonimbus, tall, layered, magnificent. Their bases rest low, near the sea, while their tops reach for the stratosphere like great dreaming towers. They don't shout their arrival. They simply appear, one by one, building in quiet harmony. Each one a sculpture of breath and balance. From above, they look like cotton mountains. From within, they feel like floating worlds. This is the moment when the storm begins to take visible shape, not just as a swirl of wind, but as a living structure of cloud and sky. It's a portrait in motion, painted in soft vapor and gentle heat. And still, the air continues to rise, and still, the clouds continue to grow. Slowly, delicately, this gentle exchange continues. Warmth becomes motion, moisture becomes cloud, cloud becomes energy, and energy becomes the rhythm of the sky. In silence, a storm blossoms, not with sound, but with form, not with haste, but with grace. And overhead, the clouds cradle the sky like petals unfolding, one breath at a time. With each rising breath of warm air, with each whispering spiral of cloud, something new begins to take shape. The rotation is no longer subtle. It's still slow, still gentle, but now it holds form. It holds purpose. The low pressure center, once just a quiet cradle of absence, now begins to organize the world around it. Winds draw inward, clouds gather in graceful arcs, and the rhythm of the storm begins to pulse with new intent. This is not yet a hurricane. It is something younger, quieter. We call it a tropical depression. Not a term meant to worry or warn, just a gentle way to describe what's forming. A system, a soft structure of energy and air, beginning to find its shape. The pressure at the center is low but steady. The winds are mild but spinning. The clouds are deepening layer by layer, as though the sky itself is taking long, thoughtful breaths. There is no sound, no flash, no haste, only gathering, only balance. Within the tropical depression, heat continues to rise from the ocean's surface, fueling the gentle uplift of air. And as that air rises, it cools, condenses, and releases even more warmth, energy returned to the atmosphere in silent exhalations. This warmth feeds the system from within, and slowly, patiently, the structure strengthens. The storm is still soft-spoken. Its presence is felt more than seen. But make no mistake, within this quiet spiral, power is quietly building. Each gust of wind is a page in the story, each curved band of cloud, a line of poetry, each rotation, a heartbeat. And though we often think of storms as sudden, even angry things, this one is neither. It is gentle, it is composed, and it is becoming. The tropical depression is like the first shape of a dream, fragile but persistent. It exists because the sea, the air, and the earth's turning have all agreed, silently, to come together. The wind patterns are beginning to align, the atmosphere is beginning to cooperate, and the storm is beginning to know itself, not with force, but with form, not with fear, but with flow. So, let's stay here for a moment longer at this early stage of the story. Let's listen to the soft murmur of the winds as they gather. Let's observe the breath of the ocean as it rises. Let's appreciate the quiet strength it takes to begin. Because here, in this cradle of calm rotation, a storm is being born. As the tropical depression begins to take shape, something mesmerizing unfolds in the air around it. Winds, once scattered and uncertain, now find their rhythm. They begin to spiral inward, not with frenzy, but with elegance, not with noise, but with grace. This is no chaotic churn. It is a dreamy spiral, like a waltz of unseen dancers, all moving to the same slow rhythm, circling a shared center. The low-pressure heart of the system gently pulls them in, and the winds respond, sliding past one another, not colliding, but curving. Each gust leans into the next, forming an endless procession of movement. It's as if the sky is winding a clock made of clouds, one that ticks not with seconds, but with soft rotations, round and round, breath by breath. The wind doesn't rush, it glides, it whispers. Around the center, the spirals tighten ever so slightly. Clouds are drawn inward, curling into bands, ribbons of vapor that twist like spun silk. From above, it would look like a painting in motion, soft strokes curling around a calm eye. This is where the storm begins to organize, not just its structure, but its rhythm. And rhythm matters, because a storm is not simply a force. It is a pattern, a system of breath and balance. These circling winds help carry warm, moist air upward, fueling more clouds, feeding more motion. But all of it, every gust, every swirl, is happening in harmony. Even as the wind speeds rise, the motion remains graceful. The center holds still, cradled by motion, and all around it, the atmosphere turns like a slow-moving mobile above a sleeping world. You might imagine the sound it makes, a faint hush, a velvet whoosh, the kind of wind you feel more than hear. There is something soothing about repetition, something comforting in circles. And here, the winds continue to circle, to whisper, to wind the storm into being, not with turmoil, but with trust. The system is becoming self-sustaining, a gentle engine powered by heat, lifted by vapor, guided by spin. And still, from the ground below or the ocean surface, it might all seem calm. Clouds drift across the horizon. Air moves with purpose, but without panic. The world watches as the sky slowly paints its spirals. So let the winds spin, let them dance, let them gather in their dreamy way. This is not the end. It is only the next step in a quiet journey. Beneath the soft spiral of forming clouds, the ocean continues to breathe, not in gasps or gulps, but in steady, generous sighs. Hour after hour, it offers warmth to the sky, patient, silent, and endless. This warmth rises in invisible currents, carried upward by the breath of the sea. The ocean never hurries. It simply gives. Each sunlit hour brings a new layer of heat to the surface. That warmth seeps into the air, coaxing water molecules to drift upward in gentle evaporation. The sea becomes a quiet provider, not just of water, but of energy, of life, lifted into the air. We often call hurricanes heat engines, and this moment explains why. They're powered by the difference between the warmth below and the cooler air above. The ocean exhales its warmth, and the atmosphere responds. But here, in this gentle chapter of the storm's life, there's no sense of urgency, only an exchange, only trust. The waves roll beneath the forming storm, soft and silver. They shimmer in the light like mirrored fabric, unaware that they are feeding something vast above them. They do not resist. They do not retreat. They give. And as they give, the storm slowly builds, not with noise, but with nourishment. Each degree of warmth from the ocean's surface lifts more vapor into the sky. Each breath of humid air brings the spiral closer to balance. This rising vapor condenses into clouds, and as those clouds form, they return their heat to the system, feeding it in kind. It's a perfect loop, a soft circle of giving and receiving. The ocean plays its part without asking for praise. It simply supports, quietly, steadily, unshaken. And the sky listens. Above, the atmosphere begins to hum with life. It draws in the gifts of the sea, shaping them into movement, lifting them into form. And still, the ocean gives. In every ripple, in every wavelet, in every hidden current, the sea breathes its warmth into the sky and waits for nothing in return. At first, the sky is scattered. Clouds drift alone, small towers of white that form and dissolve like thoughts in a dream. Each one carries energy. Each one hums with quiet purpose. But they are not yet one. They float like distant islands, beautiful but separate. Each cloud rises on its own patch of warm air. Each one dances to its own rhythm, but slowly they begin to notice each other. Tiny pulses of air pass between them. Pressure patterns nudge them closer. Winds, soft and circling, begin to wrap them gently together. And in this slow, silent dance, something beautiful begins. The clouds begin to merge. One thunderstorm brushes up against another, then another, and another still. Each one brings its own breath of wind, its own gift of rain, its own rising motion, and together they begin to knit, not in haste, but like threads in a blanket, one loop at a time. The once separate towers become part of a larger body, a connected system of breath and motion. The air within these storms begins to align, rising and falling in shared rhythm, echoing each other, lifting one another. The energy builds, not by force, but by harmony, by unity. And as they come together, they form something new, something cohesive, something whole, a cyclonic body, still forming, still soft, but now connected. From above, the structure begins to show its spiral pattern more clearly. From below, the winds feel more coordinated. The clouds darken slightly, not with threat, but with purpose. There is movement, there is rhythm, there is potential, but even here, all remains peaceful. The sounds are distant, muffled by height and mist. Thunder rumbles softly within these tall cloud towers, more of a murmur than a crash. It's the sound of the storm weaving itself into being, one cloud at a time, one breath at a time, like a blanket being drawn across the sky. The wind has been gathering, ever so gently. The clouds have been building, patiently and with grace. And now, the system nears a quiet milestone. At the surface, the winds whisper in faster spirals. Not rushing, but steady. Not loud, but firm. When those surface winds reach a soft threshold, 39 miles per hour, something changes. Not in the sky, but in how we understand it, how we speak of it, how we name it. It is no longer just a tropical depression, no longer a gathering of clouds and hopes and unseen currents. It has become something more defined, a tropical storm, and with that title, it is given a name, not to alarm, not to dramatize, but to recognize, to mark the moment when a swirl of air and sea becomes something singular, something with identity, a story we can follow, a rhythm we can trace. The naming doesn't change the storm. It remains calm, steady, soft in its motion. But the world now sees it, listens to it. It has become. This is a moment of stillness and recognition, the pause before further growth, the calm before the crescendo, but not a dangerous calm, a sacred one. Like the silence before a lullaby begins, the clouds continue to turn, the sea continues to give, and now the storm has a name whispered across weather maps and drifting satellites. But it remains the same quiet spiral, still breathing, still forming, still dreaming. This is the calm before the naming, and the beginning of its next gentle chapter. Deep within the spiraling system, a transformation begins. Not sudden, not loud, but unmistakable. The winds have circled and circled, drawing tighter with every pass. The pressure at the center has gently, steadily dropped, and with it, something beautiful begins to emerge. A clearing, a space, a calm. At the heart of this spiraling world, the clouds part ever so slightly. And in that stillness, the eye begins to open. It does not roar, it does not shake the sea. It simply reveals a round, quiet center, a place of peace within a storm's embrace. From above, it appears as a perfect circle, an unblinking, cloudless lens gazing up toward the higher atmosphere. It is surrounded by swirling strength, and yet, here in the middle, it is silent. The winds soften to near stillness. The rain pauses, and visibility clears, sometimes enough to see stars at night, or sunlight filtering through in the day. It is not an absence. It is not a weakness. It is a balance. The result of symmetry, pressure, and motion coming into harmony. As the storm matures, this eye becomes more defined, more still. It is the breath at the center of the body, the pause between inhale and exhale. Even as the winds rush around it, faster, tighter, more organized, this center remains untouched, protected by the spin, cradled by the forces around it. It is the storm's quiet heart, and in its presence, we see something profound, that even within powerful systems, even among wind and water and swirling energy, there can be peace, there can be stillness. This is the eye, the serene center of a storm in motion, a circle of calm in a churning world. Encircling the calm heart of the storm lies a place of contrast, a place where motion peaks, where energy concentrates. This is the eye wall, the breath around the stillness. Here, just beyond the gentle eye, the air rushes with the storm's most powerful winds. They don't lash, they coil. They don't clash, they align. It is a ring of intensity, but it is shaped by harmony. In the eye wall, moist air rises rapidly, cooling as it climbs. The condensation releases heat, quietly, continuously, fueling the engine from within. Rain falls here in gentle sheets that thicken as they gather. Not chaotic, not cruel, just persistent, just present. Each raindrop carries warmth upward. Each gust of wind spins with elegant precision. The eye wall is not a wall in the way we know it, not solid, not fixed. It is a living, breathing ring of motion, defined not by force, but by form. It holds the eye in balance. It shapes the quiet center by pressing evenly around it. Inside, stillness. Outside, the storm's pulse. In the eye wall, nature speaks in spirals. Rain, wind, heat, and air, each in conversation, each contributing to the rhythm of the storm. From within the eye, one can look up at this wall of motion, soaring tens of thousands of feet into the sky, clouds towering like cathedrals. But there is no fear here, only awe, only the hush of something vast and beautifully structured. This is the eye wall, not the storm's rage, but its rhythm. The breath around the stillness, the circle that holds the calm. Beyond the eye and the eye wall, the storm stretches further still. It reaches outward, tracing soft arcs across the sky like brushstrokes on a turning canvas. These are the spiral rain bands, long, elegant arms of cloud and rain, spinning out from the center like the graceful limbs of a galaxy. They travel far, sometimes hundreds of miles from the eye, carrying the storm's rhythm with them. But they do not rush, they do not roar, they drift, turn, bend and curl, always in motion, but never hurried. Each band contains its own story, clusters of cloud, gentle rain, occasional flickers of thunder, soft winds that play across the sea. They form in arcs, long, looping spirals that echo the storm's core. Between them, the sky can clear for a moment, offering glimpses of blue, a lull between breaths. These spiral bands are not decoration. They are structure. They carry warmth inward and energy upward. They help to vent the storm, guiding air from sea to sky and back again. They are the storm's outstretched hands, the extension of its heartbeat, and though they may reach far from the center, they are connected, part of the same soft rhythm that began with warm ocean breath. From space, the storm appears whole, a single spinning form. But from within, it is a layered experience, a central eye, an encircling wall, and these spiraling arms that sway across the world. If you stood beneath one, you might feel a shift in wind, a change in light, the soft patter of rain beginning again. Not jarring, just natural, just part of the pattern. The spiral rain bands are gentle messengers, carrying the pulse of the storm outward, like ripples expanding from a single drop in a still pond. And so, the storm stretches, not to take, but to move, to breathe, to remind us that even great systems have soft, reaching edges, and that every swirl, every breeze is part of something larger, something that began with warmth and became this slow, spiraling song. Beneath the spiraling clouds, the story of the hurricane always begins with something simple, something quiet, something warm. The ocean, its surface, kissed by sunlight, slowly absorbs the heat of the day. Each ray lingers, melting into the upper layers of water like golden threads. And in the tropics, where the days are long and generous, that heat builds patiently. For a hurricane to truly thrive, the water must reach a gentle threshold, about 26 degrees Celsius or 79 degrees Fahrenheit. Not scalding, not extreme, just warm enough to awaken the sky. At this temperature, the sea begins to offer itself upward. Its warmth lifts in vapor, molecule by molecule, in curls so fine they are invisible to the eye, but essential to the storm. This is not a sudden process. It unfolds over time, day by day, breath by breath. As the water warms, it becomes more generous, more willing to share its energy, and the atmosphere listens. The rising vapor feeds the air above, adding moisture, adding motion. Clouds form, spirals take shape, and the storm begins to stir with life. But beneath it all, beneath the growing wind and deepening clouds, it is the ocean that continues to give, quietly. It is heat, not fury, that fuels a hurricane. And that heat is a gift, passed from sea to sky in the softest of exchanges. There is no anger here, only warmth, only energy, rising on invisible wings. The waves don't know they are part of something larger. They shimmer, they roll, they sigh beneath the clouds, blissfully unaware that their warmth is the first note in a storm's unfolding symphony. This is the secret ingredient, not pressure, not wind, not chaos. Warm water, simple, steady, strong in its stillness. And as long as the sea continues to offer that warmth, the storm will grow, patiently and in rhythm, a dance born not of destruction, but of a silent transfer of heat from ocean to sky. High above the ocean's surface, as vapor rises and cools, a quiet miracle unfolds. The water, once warmed by sunlight and lifted into air, begins to condense. Tiny droplets form, so small, so soft, you could hold thousands on a single fingertip. But each of these droplets carries a secret. As it changes from vapor to liquid, it releases heat, not a burning heat, not one that scalds or stings, but a latent heat, a stored warmth, now returned to the sky. This energy is invisible. It makes no sound, but it is vital. Each droplet, as it joins the cloud, gives a small offering of energy, a quiet gift. And together, these gifts power something much greater. They feed the updrafts, those gentle, rising columns of air that lift the storm higher and higher. This is how a hurricane strengthens. Not from anger, not from noise, but from millions, billions of tiny droplets, each performing a quiet chemistry. This is the storm's fuel, and yet it leaves no trace of fire, just motion, just warmth, just the continued rising of air. Latent heat is called latent because it hides. It waits, stored in vapor, until the moment of transformation, and then it is released, gently. This energy deepens the storm, but it also deepens the mystery, because in every droplet that forms a cloud, there is a tiny whispered equation at work, a balance, a breath, a transfer of invisible warmth that keeps the system alive. It's easy to imagine hurricanes as forces of muscle and might, but they begin with vapor, with mist, with softness, and it is that softness, lifted by latent heat, that creates the graceful power above. So, let the droplets rise. Let them form and release. Let their hidden energy build the sky, layer by gentle layer. This is how storms grow, not loudly, but quietly, fueled by invisible fire within every breath of the clouds. There's something almost magical about the way a hurricane comes together, not from instruction, not from command, but from pattern, from motion, from a natural kind of wisdom that unfolds in perfect balance. Warm air rises, cool air sinks, winds spiral inward, clouds blossom outward, and slowly, gracefully, the storm begins to self-organize. It's not alive in the way we are, but it behaves like something breathing, something with rhythm, with response, with structure. The warm air, full of vapor, lifts from the ocean's surface and feeds the sky. As it rises, it cools and condenses, releasing energy that feeds the storm further. Meanwhile, the cooler, drier air above begins to sink, finding its place in the lower layers. And between these gentle vertical currents, a system is born, not assembled, but shaped. The storm begins to organize its own circulation. It learns where to place its spirals, how to build its eye wall, how to balance the calm center with the energy outside. All without thinking, all without needing to be told. It is a system of self-sustaining motion, like the tides, like a heartbeat, like a sleeping breath. Every part of the storm supports another. The ocean fuels the air fuels the clouds return warmth to the atmosphere, and the winds carry it all in steady, circling arms. The hurricane becomes a kind of living pattern, evolving, adjusting, adapting to its environment. Its structure is not rigid, but responsive. It changes shape with temperature, with wind shear, with moisture in the air. And yet, it remains whole. It remains balanced. A spiraling system of order, born from what once was scattered. A body of wind and water that sustains itself, moment by moment, motion by motion. So, when we look at a hurricane, we're not just seeing clouds, we're seeing a kind of quiet intelligence, the wisdom of the atmosphere, written in circles and breath. Not a machine, not a monster, but a story, told in the language of air. Every breath must have its exhale, and the hurricane is no different. While warm air rises from the ocean below, lifting moisture, forming clouds, and building energy, there is also a quiet motion above, a release, a letting go. High at the top of the storm, above the swirling towers of cloud, the hurricane exhales. This motion is called outflow, and though it happens silently, invisibly, it is essential. As the storm pulls in air at the surface, that air must eventually escape. And so, far above the clouds, the air fans outward in every direction, like the branches of a tree, spreading from the trunk, or the delicate stretch of a dandelion puff in the wind. This outflow is soft. It's not like a gust. It's not a burst of air. It's a sigh, a slow, steady expansion that balances the storm's deep inhale from below. Without it, the system would stall. It would choke on its own rising air. But with outflow, the balance is maintained, a soft upward current and a graceful release. From space, this outflow sometimes creates feathery shapes, wisps of cirrus clouds, spreading outward from the storm's center, like a crown of silver threads. They arc away gently, tracing the edge of the upper atmosphere, cool, high, and delicate. And though they seem almost still, they are moving, carrying air that has risen through the storm and now drifts outward to make space for more. It's easy to forget the sky has layers, but here, in the hurricane's upper reaches, we are reminded. Below, energy climbs. Above, it flows away. This is the crown of the storm, its final breath at the top of the world. Like a great weather tree, rooted in the warm ocean, stretching upward into the sky and exhaling softly through its highest limbs. This is the storm's rhythm. Inhale, exhale, rise, and release. And in this balance, the storm finds its grace. There comes a moment in the life of every hurricane when all the elements align. The sea is warm and generous. The air is moist and rising. The winds aloft are smooth, undisturbed, and the storm settles, not into sleep, but into balance. It no longer grows wildly. It no longer searches for form. It has become what it was meant to be, a swirling body of wind and cloud, moving with confidence and calm. This is maturity in meteorological terms, but in poetic terms, it is equilibrium, a storm at peace with itself, a slow, powerful spin across the sea, neither rushed nor reckless. Each part of the hurricane supports another. The warm ocean fuels the rise fuels the clouds feed the winds, and the outflow above keeps it all in motion. It is a complete system, not chaotic, but coordinated. From above, the eye is clear and round. The eye wall is symmetrical, its winds wrapped evenly in every direction. The spiral bands stretch gracefully outward like arms in a slow motion dance. And beneath it all, the sea accepts the storm's presence, cooling slowly as it gives. There is no panic in this phase, no desperation, only persistence, only pattern. The hurricane drifts across the ocean, guided by broad-scale winds, carried like a sleeping ship on gentle currents. It turns slightly, it leans this way or that, but always it moves with purpose, unfolding with every passing hour. It is not static, it breathes, it adjusts, but in this moment it is whole, and in that wholeness we see something rare, a storm in perfect rhythm with the world around it, still spiraling, still dreaming, still alive. The ocean gives, and gives, and gives, but eventually it begins to feel the change. As the hurricane drifts above, pulling warmth and moisture into its vast spiral, the sea beneath slowly responds. The surface waters, once sun-warmed and shimmering, begin to cool. It happens quietly, not all at once, not in dramatic contrast, but the heat that once fueled the sky has now been lifted away. The winds above churn the ocean's top layer, mixing it with cooler water below, a gentle stirring like a spoon in a teacup. And with that mixing, the surface temperature drops, not cold, just cooler, and the hurricane feels it. Less warmth means less evaporation. Less evaporation means less fuel. The breath of the ocean, once generous and rising, becomes lighter, thinner, slower. The storm, still spinning, senses this shift. It may not weaken right away, but it adjusts. Its balance begins to change. It is like a candle drawing from melted wax. As the fuel cools, the flame flickers just slightly, still present, still beautiful, but changing. The sea has given much, and now it rests. It cools in long, drifting sighs, its warmth released into the sky, its rhythm returning to calm. And above it, the storm floats on, slightly slower, slightly softer, still turning, still moving, but no longer growing. And so another chapter begins. The ocean cools, and the storm listens. High above the sea, where clouds stretch toward the stratosphere, the hurricane stands tall, its structure built on balance, rising straight and symmetrical, like a pillar in the sky. But up there, in the shifting layers of the atmosphere, there are forces that contest that balance. One of them is wind shear. Wind shear isn't a force you can see. It's not a push or a pull. It's a difference, a gentle mismatch between the winds at one height and those above or below. Imagine the lower atmosphere pulling in one direction while the higher layers tug softly in another. It doesn't strike suddenly. It doesn't shout. It simply tilts. A slight lean, a gentle nudge. And if that nudge becomes too strong, the storm begins to tip. Its delicate vertical structure, carefully built from warm rising air, starts to bend. Its columns of motion become uneven. The heat can no longer rise straight upward. The core becomes displaced, and the spiral begins to falter. But not all wind shear disrupts. In fact, low wind shear can do the opposite. When upper-level winds move softly and evenly, they allow the storm to remain poised, upright, elegant, and centered. Like a candle flame sheltered from a breeze, the hurricane glows in its full symmetry. The eye stays round, the eye wall holds firm, the spiral arms extend evenly from the center. It is in these conditions that hurricanes find their most graceful expression, not because they are unopposed, but because they are undisturbed. It's a fragile kind of harmony. The storm must align with its surroundings, feeling its way upward through the layers of air. And when everything is just right, the storm moves with effortless balance, a ballet of vapor and wind, suspended between sea and sky. Wind shear doesn't always break the storm. Sometimes it just reminds us how delicate the balance is. How even the most powerful systems are shaped by softness, by subtlety, by the invisible conversation between layers of the sky. The storm has journeyed far across open seas, spinning in rhythm with the wind and water, but eventually its path leads it to shore. This moment is called landfall, and though it marks a turning point, it does not happen with violence in our story. It arrives like a softening edge. When the hurricane touches land, its tether to the ocean, the warm, endless source of moisture and heat, is broken. The sea, once its breath and body, begins to fall away behind it, and the storm feels it, not immediately, not dramatically, but deep within its structure, the balance begins to shift. No more warm vapor rising from below, no more steady exhale of energy from the waves. Instead, it moves over earth, over trees and hills, valleys and stone. These surfaces do not feed the storm, they slow it, they ground it. Friction replaces flow. The spiral begins to loosen. The winds, once graceful in their arcs, begin to scatter. But even here, even in decay, there is beauty. The storm still turns. Its spiral still dances, echoing across the land like a memory of the ocean. Rain drifts down in soft sheets. Clouds trail behind like ribbons unraveling. It is not an end, but a transformation. The hurricane becomes something quieter, less organized, but still present. It fades not with a crash, but with a long, sighing breath. And in that breath, its journey continues, just differently. Landfall is not a failure. It is a return, a reminder that every storm, no matter how vast, must eventually touch ground and rest. Even as the hurricane spins in place or drifts slowly along its path, it is never truly alone. It gathers, not just from the sea below, but from the sky all around. Moisture is drawn inward from vast distances, from the atmosphere, from nearby air masses, from evaporating surfaces touched by the storm's breath. Like a weaver pulling threads, the storm brings them closer, one by one. This is not a hurried collection. It is a gathering with care, a pulling in of potential, a drawing together of softness. The spiral arms do more than spin. They reach. They wrap gently around pockets of moisture in the air. And as these threads are drawn inward, they become part of the whole. They rise, condense, and release their warmth, just like the vapor that came from the sea. This process is subtle, yet essential. It expands the storm's reach. It fuels continued motion. It allows the hurricane to breathe from all sides, not just from below. Moisture becomes motion. Air becomes structure. And the system continues, quietly knitting together the atmosphere into a tapestry of cloud and rhythm. Even when the storm has moved past the warmest waters, even when landfall has begun, this inward gathering continues. It is the storm's final act of creation, the last extension of its design, and it is done gently, with patience, with grace, because hurricanes, for all their size and symmetry, are not made in haste. They are formed through connection, through balance, and through the quiet gathering of everything the sky is willing to give. At the very center of the hurricane, beneath the spiraling clouds, beneath the circling wind, there is a quiet force at work. It isn't loud, it isn't visible, but it is there, shaping everything around it. This is air pressure, specifically low air pressure, the quietest kind. In the center of the storm, the pressure drops lower than anywhere else nearby. This isn't an emptiness, but a soft reduction, a gentle hollow in the atmosphere. And because nature seeks balance, air from the surroundings begins to flow inward, drawn gently, steadily, toward this invisible core. This inward movement, this hush of rushing air, is what becomes wind. Not from chaos, not from force, but from the difference between higher pressure outside the storm and lower pressure inside. The greater the difference, the stronger the wind. But even at its strongest, the force is not loud here in this story. It's a movement of balance, a soft response to an unseen center. The low pressure doesn't shout to be noticed. It doesn't demand. It simply draws. And the air listens. It circles inward, tighter and tighter, in spirals shaped by the Earth's rotation. Eventually, it reaches the center and rises. Cooler air rushes in to replace it. And so the cycle continues. This is the architecture of a hurricane, built by pressure, sculpted by the wind. No walls, no beams, just air, moving toward a center that holds it all in rhythm. This is the calm magnetism at the storm's heart, the vacuum of stillness that spins the sky. Above the storm, the clouds rise. Taller than towers, taller than mountains, they stretch toward the highest reaches of the atmosphere. These are cumulonimbus clouds, thunderclouds shaped by rising air, by heat, by invisible energy that lifts them skyward. And at their tallest, they touch a boundary, a threshold between two realms. It's called the tropopause, a word that sounds like a pause in the sky, and in a way, it is. The tropopause is the thin, quiet border between the troposphere, where all weather lives, and the stratosphere, the stillness above. Down here, in the troposphere, the air is alive with motion. Winds shift, clouds form, storms rise and fall. But above that, the stratosphere rests. So, when a hurricane's tallest clouds brush the tropopause, they are reaching the edge of weather itself, the very ceiling of storms. Sometimes they flatten at the top, spreading outward in soft anvils, cooled by the boundary, unable to rise further. And during sunset, these high clouds glow. Painted in hues of coral and gold, they shimmer at altitudes where the sun still touches, even as the world below begins to dim. They stand like cathedrals, lit by the last light. And as night falls, they fade into softness. From the ground, they are shadows. From above, they are lacework across the sky. No sound, no motion visible from afar, just presence. These towering clouds, so full of water and wind and warmth, reach as high as clouds can reach. They mark the crown of the storm, pressing gently against the top of the world. And then they begin to fall, droplets returning to earth, carrying the memory of the sky. In the center of most storms, you'll find coolness, a chill that forms as air rises, cools, and falls again. But hurricanes are different. At their heart, they are warm. This warmth doesn't burn. It doesn't scorch. It glows, quietly, steadily, like the embers of a sleeping fire. We call this the warm core. It's a soft furnace, fueled by the condensation of vapor into cloud. Each droplet releases a bit of heat, and that heat collects in the storm's center, rising upward, spiraling outward, guiding the wind. This warmth isn't just a side effect. It's what makes a hurricane spin the way it does. The heat causes pressure to fall. The falling pressure pulls in more air. The air rises, warms, and spins. And the cycle continues. All of this happens quietly, within a structure so graceful it could be mistaken for stillness. The warm core keeps the storm upright, organized, and in motion. It is the engine, but also the heart. It doesn't flicker like lightning. It doesn't flash like fire. It endures, constant, soft, a steady presence beneath the clouds. From above, you would never guess it's there, but inside, every breath of wind, every ring of cloud, circles this center of warmth. It is why hurricanes are self-sustaining, able to keep moving, even as conditions shift. And it is why, when the ocean cools or land interrupts the flow, the storm begins to weaken. Because without the warm core, the dance can't continue. So, in the quiet core of a hurricane, there is no chaos, only calm heat, rising and swirling, spinning the storm with gentle insistence. This is the warm heart that keeps the winds alive, a center of softness, moving the sky. Inside the spiraling body of the hurricane, beneath the clouds, between the layers of rising and sinking air, there is motion we cannot see. It moves quietly, gently, like ripples on the surface of a pond. But in the sky, these are gravity waves, not to be confused with the waves of the ocean below, or the gravitational waves of deep space. These are subtle oscillations in the atmosphere, small shifts in air pressure and movement, caused when air is pushed upward and then pulled back down by the invisible hand of gravity. Within the storm, as air rises in warm, moist updrafts, it disturbs the surrounding layers. That disturbance sends out a ripple, up and out, then down and back again. The atmosphere responds with a gentle swaying, a kind of atmospheric breath. Though we cannot see them directly, gravity waves shape the rhythm of the storm. They help air move from place to place. They distribute energy. They support the structure. It's a quiet balancing act, the storm breathing in and out, each ripple helping it to adjust, to stretch, to settle. Sometimes, gravity waves help form bands of clouds, or trigger bursts of rainfall. Sometimes, they pass without a trace, felt only in the pattern of wind. But they are always there, drifting through the storm like threads of silk, keeping the system in tune. They move faster than the winds we can feel. They whisper in wavelengths that shape the atmosphere from within. They are the soft internal voice of the hurricane, a quiet conversation between layers of air. Even in the storm's most peaceful state, these ripples continue, undisturbed, unnoticed, but always present, always part of the song. As the hurricane grows and moves, it continues to change, not all at once, not with noise, but with slow, natural cycles of renewal. One of these is called the eye wall replacement cycle, a gentle restructuring that happens deep within the storm's heart. The eye wall, that ring of intense energy circling the calm eye, sometimes becomes too tight, too intense, too small to sustain itself. And so, it begins to change. A new ring of storms, just outside the old one, starts to form. It gathers, it grows, and over time, it replaces the original eye wall. The process is slow, measured, graceful, like a tree shedding one ring and growing another. During this cycle, the storm may weaken slightly, its winds may soften, its eye may disappear for a while, but it is not breaking. It is rebuilding. It is learning how to balance its strength in a new way. Once the new eye wall is in place, the storm may strengthen again, wider, more stable, more mature. But this is not always the case. Sometimes it grows, sometimes it softens. There is no single outcome, only transformation. From above, you might see a faint double ring of clouds, like ripples nesting within each other. From within, the shift is quiet, an unseen rotation of the inner workings, a soft breath of change. The storm does not resist. It yields. It reforms. This is the hurricane's way of adapting, of recentering itself when its balance grows strained. It does not fear the change. It flows with it. The eye wall replacement cycle is not a flaw. It's part of the rhythm, part of the life of a living, breathing system. Beneath the hurricane, the ocean stretches deep. We often think of surface warmth, the shimmering heat at the top of the sea, where sunlight dances and waves roll. But for a storm to truly thrive, depth matters. This is known as ocean heat content, a measure not just of how warm the surface is, but how far down that warmth reaches. If the warmth runs shallow, the hurricane may pull it upward quickly, using it, consuming it, leaving cool water behind. But if the warmth runs deep, the sea becomes a lasting source of energy, a slow burning fire beneath the storm. Every churn of wind, every spiral of cloud mixes the surface with the layers below. And if those layers are warm too, the storm is nourished. It grows steady, it grows strong. But if the deeper water is cool, the storm begins to feel the change. The fuel runs low, the energy wanes, and the winds begin to soften. This interaction is subtle, but essential. It reminds us that what lies beneath the surface can shape everything above. Just as emotions hidden deep inside can change the face we show the world, so too does the sea's hidden warmth shape the storm's future. Ocean heat content is the invisible foundation of the hurricane's strength. It is the quiet depth that sustains, or gently slows, the spiral above. And so, as the storm travels, it listens, it senses, and it responds to the warmth beneath. Far above the swirling clouds of the hurricane, above the eye, the bands, the breath of the sea, winds travel high across the sky. These are the upper-level winds. They move swiftly, rivers of air flowing across the top of the atmosphere, quiet and unseen. And though they exist far above the storm, they have the power to shape it, to support it, or to soften it. When the hurricane is in harmony with these winds, something beautiful happens. The outflow, the storm's gentle exhale, is carried away smoothly. The rising air is welcomed by the currents above. The spiral remains upright, elegant, composed. It is cradled by the sky. Like a candle protected from the breeze, the hurricane glows, quietly in its symmetry. Every part of the system works in balance, from ocean warmth to high-altitude air. But if the upper-level winds grow too strong, or move in a way that cuts across the storm, the harmony begins to shift. These winds, known as vertical wind shear, can tilt the storm, pull it off-center, stretch it unevenly, not violently, but gradually. The spiral may lose its shape. The eye may become clouded. The motion begins to unravel, like a ribbon untied, like threads pulling from the edge of a woven pattern. This unraveling doesn't happen all at once. It is soft, subtle, but steady. The storm, no longer supported by the sky above, becomes less efficient. Its breath slows, its strength fades. This is not a failure. It is part of the balance, the way the atmosphere guides and responds to its own creations. So, when upper-level winds flow gently, the storm flourishes, and when they disturb, the spiral learns to let go. Even hurricanes, so vast and powerful, are shaped by the winds that move quietly overhead, touched by softness, held by the sky. Beneath the hurricane's winds, something begins to stir in the sea. Not a crashing wave, not a towering swell, but a slow, upward breath, a gathering of water, lifted by the spiral's embrace. This is storm surge. As the hurricane spins, its winds push against the ocean's surface. Mile after mile, the water is nudged forward, guided not by violence, but by steady, continuous pressure. The water doesn't fight, it yields, it gathers, and beneath the center of the storm, it forms a quiet dome. This dome of water rises gently, pressed upward by air that grows lighter, by winds that curl and lean. As the storm approaches the shore, this dome begins to move. It rolls forward, not like a crashing wave, but like a tide that forgets to stop. It is relentless, but not reckless. It is the ocean responding to the wind, to pressure, to the presence of something passing above. Where the coastline is low, the surge travels far, across marshes, fields, and bays. It flows into places not usually touched by sea, lifting gently, spilling softly, then receding once the spiral moves on. There is no single sound to it, only a hush, a deep, rising presence. Storm surge reminds us that water listens to the sky, that even the sea is shaped by the wind. And when the spiral draws near the land, the ocean rises to meet it, not in fury, but in fullness, a slow, unbroken tide, whispering at the edge of the world. Rainfall, gentle, steady, endless. One of the hurricane's most profound gifts is not its wind or shape, but its rain. As the storm turns, as vapor rises and clouds blossom, moisture begins to fall. Not in sudden bursts, but in long, slow rhythms. A curtain of water, falling from the sky like breath released. This is not rain that passes in minutes. It is persistent, a deep soaking that continues hour after hour, layer after layer. Every drop begins as vapor lifted by warmth. Each one forms high above, condenses and returns to earth. Together, they create a quiet transformation. Forests drink, fields soften, rivers swell and curve through the land. The world below is reshaped, not by pressure, but by patience. Rain fills low places, rests on leaves, slips through soil. It seeps into the roots of trees, the hearts of valleys. It brings renewal and sometimes stillness. In some places, it may linger too long. In others, it brings life where dryness once lingered. But always, it comes in rhythm, the slow percussion of cloud and sky. The hurricane does not scatter rain like a storm cloud in a rush. It offers it like a long exhale, sheet after sheet, drift after drift, a lullaby written in water. And when the storm has passed, the earth remains wrapped in silence, wet, reflective, transformed. Rainfall is the storm's softest voice, and yet its most lasting, a memory left not in wind, but in water, falling, filling, forever part of the land it touched. As the sun slips beneath the horizon, the hurricane becomes a silhouette, a vast spinning shadow across the sea. Its clouds, so tall and complex by day, become even more mysterious by night. And in the deep heart of the storm, in its warm and towering center, a quiet light begins to pulse. Lightning, not the sharp cracks of a thunderstorm on land, not jagged bolts lashing out, but soft, internal flickers, dim glows, strokes of electricity that ripple through the clouds, as if the storm were breathing out sparks from within its chest. The lightning here is not loud. It is not urgent. It appears like a whisper of energy, a soft conversation between droplets and ice, between updrafts and cloud particles. Flashes form where warm air rises rapidly, deep inside the eye wall or around the spiral bands. The air is filled with motion, and in that motion, charges build. And then, a pulse, a bloom of light within a tower of vapor. To watch from afar is to see the storm's heartbeat, flashes echoing like quiet signals, deep inside a living spiral. Each flicker tells us something is alive in there, still turning, still breathing, still glowing in the night. Sometimes the flashes are faint, like the shimmer of fireflies. Sometimes they brighten the eye itself, glowing through the calm center and illuminating the edges of the clouds. But always, they are brief, never frantic, never wild. The lightning within a hurricane is the storm's gentle signature, a reminder that even in darkness, energy flows. Even in silence, something stirs. These flickers do not alarm, they soothe. They are the storm's lullaby to itself, a light that dances, then fades, then returns again. The hurricane breathes, not in gasps or sighs, but in one long, continuous rhythm, a loop, a cycle, a whisper of persistence that never truly ends. It inhales warm, moist air from the ocean's surface, slowly, patiently, gathering energy with each soft pull. This air rises, lifting upward through the spiraling structure, carrying heat and vapor into the waiting sky. As it climbs, it cools. Clouds form, rain falls, and in that transformation, energy is released. A quiet exhale, warming the air aloft. Then, above the clouds, that air begins to spread outward. It cools further. It slows, and gently, it sinks, drifting back down in the outer parts of the storm, returning to the sea, ready to begin again. This is the breath of the hurricane. Upward, outward, downward, inward, a circle of motion drawn not by lungs, but by balance. It is not forced, it is not commanded, it simply happens, and it never stops. While the storm remains over warm water, this breath continues, a self-sustaining engine powered by difference. Warm at the bottom, cool at the top, a pattern as old as the sky. Every part of the storm plays its role. The ocean offers warmth, the clouds lift it upward, the upper winds carry it away, the atmosphere returns it to begin once more. And through it all, there is no single moment of rest, but also no urgency, just rhythm, just breath, just being. This is how the storm survives, how it lives, how it turns across the sea, not through force, but through the art of continuous exchange. And when that balance begins to fade, when the ocean cools or the winds shift, the breath grows softer, shallower, and the spiral begins to let go. But until then, it breathes, and breathes, and breathes. There are moments when the storm, so strong in its spiral, so steady in its breath, encounters something unexpected. Something that doesn't strike, but slips in, quietly. Dry air. Unlike the warm, moist air the hurricane craves, dry air offers no fuel, no vapor to lift, no droplets to form. It doesn't push or pull. It doesn't roar. It simply arrives, like silence entering a song. And in that silence, the storm begins to change. Dry air can sneak into the mid-levels of the storm, threading itself between cloud bands, settling into the edges of the eye wall, drifting through the core. Its presence cools the updrafts, weakens the clouds, and slowly, the hurricane's symmetry begins to fade. The spiral becomes uneven. The rain bands begin to break. The core softens, loosens, unwinds. Not all at once, but gently, like a spool losing its thread. The storm is not being destroyed. It is being interrupted, because without moisture, there is no rising motion, and without rising motion, there is no warmth, no breath. And yet, this disruption feels peaceful. It is the slow exhale of something once self-sustaining that has decided to rest. Dry air teaches us that even absence has power, that the lack of something essential can shift a great system without making a sound. The hurricane, once organized and whole, begins to release its pattern bit by bit. And in this letting go, there is no drama, only surrender. The storm drifts, its clouds scatter, its story nears its end, all because something soft was missing. Dry air is not an enemy. It is a reminder that balance requires more than movement. It requires moisture, heat, and harmony. And when one piece disappears, the spiral learns how to let go. The sea stretches wide, blue and endless, sun-warmed and shimmering. And as long as that sea remains warm and the sky remains gentle, the hurricane continues its quiet journey. There is no rush, no need to arrive. It drifts, guided by whispering winds and ocean breath. A slow voyage, carving its story into the sky. The storm does not charge forward, it flows. And as it travels across the warm waters, it shapes clouds like brushstrokes on a canvas. Each spiral, each band, a soft line drawn by invisible hands. Below, the ocean gives. Evaporation rises. The storm breathes it in, not with hunger, but with gratitude. Above, the clouds shift in graceful curves. Pillars of white reach upward, then fade into delicate wisps. From space, the hurricane appears as art, a spiraling masterpiece painted in moisture and motion. Each day at sea brings new light, new shapes, new color. Mornings bring golden halos through cirrus clouds. Afternoons shimmer with heat and haze. Sunsets stretch the storm's silhouette across the horizon, a watercolor in the sky. And beneath it all, the warm sea hums, still feeding, still guiding, still soft beneath the turning storm. As long as these waters welcome the spiral, the hurricane remains steady, not only surviving, but thriving. It's not a conquest, it's a relationship between wind and water, between rhythm and rest. And so, it drifts, not as a threat, but as a traveler, a guest on the ocean's surface, leaving no footprints, only patterns in cloud, and warmth traded for motion. This is the storm's slow crossing, a dreamlike journey across a sea that still believes in it. Sometimes, far out over the ocean, two storms form near one another, both spiraling, both breathing, both alive with motion, and slowly, they begin to notice each other, not with collision, but with curiosity. Each storm feels the other's presence, their winds reaching out like fingertips, their spirals bending in response. They begin to move, not toward destruction, but toward a kind of dance. This graceful interaction is called the Fujiwara effect, a quiet ballet in the atmosphere, where two cyclones begin to orbit one another, drawn by balance, guided by shared momentum. They do not crash, they curve. They swirl around a common center, moving in slow, elegant circles. Sometimes one storm is stronger, the lead in the duet, pulling the other gently into place. Sometimes they merge, becoming one larger, reshaped spiral. Other times, they part ways, a brief meeting, a shared rhythm, then a soft goodbye. But always, there is grace. These dances do not happen often. The sky must be just right. The distances must align. But when they do, the result is beautiful. Two spirals turning together, mirroring each other's curves, suspended in a slow-motion waltz across the sea. The Fujiwara effect reminds us that even storms have relationships, connections shaped not by force, but by flow. It is not chaos, it is choreography, atmospheric motion written in spirals and space, a gentle dance that belongs to the wind. Every journey must shift. Every storm, eventually, reaches the edge of what it once was. For a hurricane, that moment comes when the sea grows cooler, or when it moves across land and feels the ocean's warmth slip away. But it doesn't end all at once. It begins to change. This change is called the post-tropical transition, a soft transformation from one kind of storm into another. The structure loosens, the eye fades, the warm core cools slowly from within. The hurricane is no longer tropical. It no longer feeds on warmth from the sea, but it still spins. Its winds stretch out, its rain bands spread wide. It becomes asymmetrical, tilted and reshaped by the upper-level winds. It may even join with other systems, cold fronts, jet streams, becoming something new, something broader. It's not a death, it's a rebirth, a continuation in a quieter form. The post-tropical storm still carries clouds, still brings rain, still breathes, but differently. It is softer now. Its energy is borrowed from other places. And in that softness, there is a certain peace, like a fire that has burned bright and now glows in embers, like a song that no longer plays aloud, but hums on in memory. It is the ghost of the storm, not haunting, but drifting, moving with the wind, still connected us to the rhythm of the world. Some may still feel its rain, some may still hear its wind, but the spiral, once so perfect and warm, has become something else. The storm has changed, but its story continues, softened, stretched, and still turning. This is the post-tropical phase, the storm's final form, a gentle goodbye to the ocean that once held it. The sky remembers, so does the sea, and together they have been in quiet conversation for centuries. A conversation written not in words, but in wind and warmth and time. This is the long dialogue between hurricanes and climate. The two are not separate. One is shaped by the other, gently, gradually, like the slow bending of a branch towards sunlight. As our world warms, so too does the ocean. And with every rise in sea surface temperature, the breath of the sea grows deeper. The energy it offers to the atmosphere becomes more abundant. And hurricanes, those vast spirals of breath and balance, listen to this change. They do not grow louder in a single moment. They do not shift overnight. But over many seasons, many years, a subtle pattern begins to emerge. Some storms become more intense. Their cores grow warmer, their winds more focused, their rain more persistent. Still, not every storm is stronger. Not every year is louder. Climate is not a single note. It is a symphony, one that plays out slowly, with quiet crescendos, gentle variations, and long silences in between. This story is unfolding still. Scientists observe, satellites watch, equations hum quietly behind screens. And through it all, the ocean continues to warm. The air continues to hold more moisture. These changes don't make hurricanes sudden strangers. They remain what they've always been, complex, evolving systems of balance. But now, some arrive with deeper voices. Some stay longer over water. Some bring more rain than we remember. And so, the conversation deepens. It is not a warning. It is not a cry. It is a dialogue, patient and ongoing, between a changing world and the storms that drift across it. To listen to this story is not to fear it. It is to understand that even the sky responds to the warmth of the earth. And in that response, we hear the long breath of a planet in motion. A hurricane spins, it gathers, it drifts, and eventually it fades. The clouds loosen, the winds soften, the breath of the storm falls still, but its presence remains, not in fear, not in destruction, but in quiet traces, in the softened shape of land, in the moist hush of the earth, beneath our feet. After the storm passes, the world is quieter. The soil is damp and rich, its thirst gently quenched. Aquifers deep beneath the surface drink from the rain that fell for hours, sometimes days. Rivers swell with new volume. Lakes rise with steady patience. The land breathes again, its roots fed by sky. The coastline, too, may shift. Not always abruptly, but gradually, reshaped by slow, persistent tides. Beaches rearranged, dunes smoothed, shells carried from one place to another, telling a silent story of motion. And in the forests, Leaves gleam with leftover rain. Branches rest after hours of windsong. The storm has moved on, but its memory lingers in every droplet, every curve, every softened line. Even in the sky, a different light appears, cleaner, clearer, as if the clouds have stepped aside to let the sun pass through. The hurricane leaves behind not just a physical trace, but a kind of stillness, a breath held by the land. Some of its legacy is change, a shifted shoreline, a new channel carved. Some is renewal, reservoirs replenished, fields refreshed. And some is simply beauty, patterns in sand, petals rinsed clean, pools of water reflecting sky. These are the soft echoes of the storm, not warnings, not wounds, but whispers, reminders that nature moves in cycles, that energy becomes rain, and rain becomes memory. And long after the winds are gone, the earth remembers in puddles and petals, in softened soil and silver mist. This is the quiet legacy of a storm that once breathed and passed. High above the ocean, beyond the reach of most eyes, a set of wings begins to glide. Not bird, not butterfly, but something human-made, yet humble, drawn not to escape the storm, but to enter it. These are the hurricane hunters, soft-winged aircraft, specially designed to pass through the spiral's breath, to follow the quiet pulse into the heart of the storm. They do not race. They approach with care. Their flight path bends gently, matching the curvature of the clouds. As they move closer, the sky darkens. Rain thickens. Winds pull and press. They enter the eye wall, where rain falls in endless sheets and turbulence whispers in rising air. It is not violent in the way we imagine. It is rhythmic, a consistent motion, a pattern that wraps around the center like the arms of a weathered clock. Inside, they gather data, temperature, humidity, wind speed, the shapes of clouds, the breadth of pressure. And then, after passing through walls of rain and cloud, they emerge into the center, into the eye. Silence, stillness, light. It is a place untouched by the storm's noise, a calm cathedral of air, surrounded by sky. From within, they look up and see the eye wall as a ring of cloud circling the open heavens above. A lens, a halo, a doorway between storm and space. The hurricane hunters pause here, in this still heart, collecting the quiet. They do not disrupt, they only listen, they only observe. Their instruments hum softly, gathering each breath, each shift, each pulse of motion. And then, with reverence, they pass through once more, back through the walls, out into the outer spiral, and home again. Their journey brings knowledge, but also awe, because to fly into the heart of a hurricane is to witness something ancient and alive, not angry, but balanced, a slow breathing system, spinning with patience, and within it, a place of peace. The hurricane hunters remind us that even in the wildest places, there is structure, there is rhythm, and there is beauty. They carry home the storm's secrets, not to tame it, but to understand it, to honor its breath, to share its story. Look closely at a hurricane from above, and you will see something ancient, something familiar, something that stirs a quiet recognition, a spiral. It is not unique to storms. It is a pattern whispered through the universe. We find it in galaxies, arms of stars winding softly around distant cores. We find it in seashells, the perfect curls of a nautilus built slowly, layer by layer. We find it in the unfurling of ferns, in the twisting of vines, in the windswept curl of waves as they kiss the shore. And we find it here, in the clouds of a hurricane, a spiral turning, rising, breathing. there is something deeply poetic about this, that the same shape lives in the vastness of the cosmos, in the quiet curl of life beneath the sea, and in the great storms that drift across our planet's surface. The spiral is not just a pattern, it is a storyline, a movement outward and inward at once. It represents growth, evolution, return. No beginning, no end, only motion, only flow. In a hurricane, the spiral forms from heat and air, from difference and balance. But what it gives us is wonder. We trace its arms across satellite images. We marvel at its symmetry. We dream of its center, a place of peace surrounded by motion. It becomes a symbol of the Earth's breath, of nature's design, of rhythm and release. And somewhere in us, we know this shape. We carry spirals in our fingertips. We see them in our galaxies. We remember them in storms. The hurricane is not a symbol of destruction in this story. It is a reminder of nature's quiet poetry, of form emerging from breath, of circles that stretch into eternity. So the next time you see the spiral of a storm, remember this. You are not just seeing weather. You are seeing a pattern of the universe, a motion echoed across time and space, a turning that has no voice, but speaks to something deep within us. The spiral lives in our imagination because it has always lived in our world. And in the hush of sleep, as thoughts begin to drift, it turns once more, softly, slowly, eternally. And now, as we reach the end of our gentle exploration, a quiet thank you for being here, for drifting with me through the spiral story. I hope this slow journey into the heart of hurricanes brought you calm, a sense of wonder, and perhaps the soft beginning of sleep. May the quiet rhythms of air and ocean stay with you. May they settle into your thoughts like gentle rain, or drift through your dreams like clouds across an evening sky. If you'd like to support these soft weather stories, feel free to like or subscribe, only if your spirit feels called. Your presence, your stillness here, already means the world. There's nothing more you need to hold. You can rest now. Let your thoughts float like mist over warm waters. Let your breath slow like the calm center of a storm. Let sleep take you like a soft tide, curling around your senses, pulling you gently inward. Peaceful dreams, calm skies to you. Good night, dear traveler. Wherever you are in the world, may rest find you and hold you lightly.